Thank you again, everybody, for joining us today for a Lifeline webinar on July 20th, 2017 over recruitment and retention for Crisis Center volunteers and staff. I'm so excited to have Rachel, Beth, and Ron with me here today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves here in a minute. My name is Chris Maxwell. Like I said, I am the coordinator of member engagement for the Lifeline. I'm really excited to have everybody here today. This is a really important topic. I think it'll be really beneficial to hear what everybody has to say, and especially to get everybody's questions as well. We want to make sure that everybody has their questions, concerns, issues answered. As you can see, we are doing this in a very different way than most of our webinars or presentations, in that we don't really have any slides. So you're going to have to look at it. So you're just going to have to deal with it for about an hour. But luckily, we have some awesome people. And I'm wondering if Rachel and Beth, if you can start us off and introduce yourselves, tell us a little about CRN, and kick it off.
Okay. I'm Rachel Peterson, and I'm the Director of Human Resources here at CRN. I joined a little over a year ago, and anything that's related to HR really falls under my purview. So I'll let Beth introduce herself, and she's also our Public Relations Officer, so I'll let her talk a little bit about CRN as a whole.
So yes, my name is Beth Maltrud. I'm currently the Director of Training and PR. I started with Crisis Response Network about 4 years ago as a crisis specialist. So I was on the phone taking calls. My background is in behavioral health and licensed counselor as well. And then I was a crisis supervisor, and we went through a lot of transition at that time where we didn't really have a lot of retention planning. I think we only had one HR person that was really stretched thin, and so a lot of the culture, the morale was kind of, that was us, the supervisors and employees, and so we had to get really creative, and I'm excited to share some of those things with you guys today. But we have a 24/7 crisis contact center. We also have a 24/7 peer support warm line here at Crisis Response Network. We do have some other lines of business, but I think those two are the most applicable for everyone on the call today. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you both. Ron, how's it going? Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and Samaritans in Boston?
Sure. Samaritans is celebrating its 41st year here in Boston. We are have three legs of the stool. We have our crisis services, which include phone, chat, and text. We have community education and outreach. We're presenting in middle schools, high schools, colleges, universities, workplaces, and a grief support services program where we offer support groups for those who have recently lost someone to suicide, and also offer in-person, in-home visits by volunteers who are themselves lost survivors.
Fantastic. So yeah, thank you all again for joining us today. And because you all do such an amazing job at both of the things we're going to be talking about today, recruitment and retention, thank you, and I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get started, and we'll start by asking probably one of the more difficult things when it comes to working at a crisis center. How do you get people to do this work? How do you bring people in and say, this is going to be some of the most difficult things, these are going to be some of the most difficult things that you've ever done. You're going to be in very difficult situations with these people who are struggling. So how do you make that sound enticing? How do you effectively recruit people to do this line of work? Beth and Rachel, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the recruitment tactics you all use.
Sure. So our recruitment strategy really is to go after the passive candidate, the one that may be really happy in their current role. Usually they're doing crisis work or something very close to that. And we connect with them, LinkedIn, however, other social networks, connect with them. And sometimes, they're interested right off the bat. And sometimes they're interested a year later, and they come back to us when they're ready. But I think reaching out to them very early is what's very critical for us. I also believe that the candidate experience plays a significant role in whether or not they end up accepting our offer. So we try to make that as seamless and quick and comfortable and welcoming as possible. And we do that by ensuring that we have multiple touch points throughout the process. And we also explain the process to them up front. Another thing that we do is we changed all of our job advertisements a year ago to really not only describe the job in depth, but really put that call to action in there. And we do that by emphasizing our mission, which is inspiring hope in others.
Very cool. What sort of settings do you typically recruit from? I know you said you try to catch them kind of earlier in their careers. Where do you tend to look for these people?
Probably the biggest place we look for people is LinkedIn.
Okay.
And then we're also very active in career fairs, so local career fairs, either through schools or through other organizations that, for example, help women gain employment and things like that.
And I think in terms of what background they have that we're looking for, something that I had noticed as a supervisor and I think was really helpful in my transition from an outpatient clinic to a crisis specialist is case management. I think case managers typically transition very well into this role, especially because they're kind of community resource experts already. They know how to talk to people, they know how to work with individuals, and so it's really just kind of transitioning those skills to a contact center environment, and they are usually very successful and tend to move through this process more quickly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Those people are going to have really close connection with that direct support. Like you said, they're going to know what's around town. They're going to be able to provide those more local resources and connections. That's really interesting. Ron, what sort of tactics do you use in terms of recruitment?
Well, we rely certainly on word of mouth. If a volunteer has a good experience here, we hope they'll share that experience with their friends and family, and that we can get them in the door. And we see quite a bit of that amongst our volunteers. But we're also online as much as possible. There are 12 unique websites where we post volunteer opportunities. Indeed and Volunteer Match probably are at the top of that list. There are 17 colleges and universities where we post our volunteer opportunities, and roughly 36 volunteer recruitment fairs throughout the year that we participate in. Now, a lot of those fairs take place at these same colleges and universities. And in addition to that, we have some unique relationships with area colleges. For example, Boston College has a service learning program called PULSE, P-U-L-S-E, another service learning program called 4, the number 4, Boston. And you look at probably anywhere from 15 to 18 students over the course of the academic year from those specific programs. And in addition, we take interns from Lesley University, social work students, macro students from Boston University. Then after we have, they go online, they express interest, then they get information about what we call information sessions, where they come in the evening, they hear a brief presentation about Samaritans and what we do, what we're looking for. They fill out an application, then they have an opportunity to interview with a staff member or senior volunteer, and then they're either selected or unfortunately rejected because sometimes it's not the right fit. And the next step is to enroll them in a training class and get them through that before we get them on the phone.
Very cool. Really quick, so that we can make sure that we're getting everything that we can from you, Ron. A couple of people are having issues hearing you. Is there a way to increase the volume or anything that might help?
Is that better?
Oh, that's so much better.
We can go old school here. So.
Yeah, this is perfect.
Okay, good.
Yeah, great. So one of the things that both of you mentioned were these job and volunteer fairs, and I'm wondering if there are depending on whether or not you're trying to recruit volunteers versus actual employees, what are the differences in settings that you look at for recruitment for volunteers or staff? For anybody.
CRN, we typically don't have volunteers. We do have some on-call staff, but they are paid employees. So LinkedIn really is more focused on employment, although in profiles in LinkedIn, candidates can elect volunteer areas that they focus on. So looking at candidates' profiles on LinkedIn can sometimes give you an indication of the areas of focus that they desire.
Cool. Ron, do you find a difference? I mean, outside of actually going to these volunteer fairs, do you find a difference in whether or not it's easier to find them at schools, local schools, or using LinkedIn, or what sort of strategy do you use in looking for either volunteers?
Well, with the school programs, it's almost a competitive process because not everyone who applies to be at Samaritans will be accepted. So. And then for many of those programs, there's what we call a service learning contract, where it's clearly spelled out what the student's learning expectations are and what our expectations are of the student. I do know that many people in career transition or students who are considering graduate school or career change, they want to experience what's it like to work in, they're considering social work or psychology, and this is a way for them to get exposed to that field and test the waters about their comfort level.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think when I previously worked in a crisis center, and I helped with recruitment, that was one of the things that we always heard, is that these are really good opportunities for people to get that direct service before they ever really go into their professional training or their field. Yeah.
The other thing we offer them in terms of, I guess it's maybe both a recruitment and a retention tool is, we're more than happy to provide a letter of reference for graduate school or work if you complete the requirements. So we're very upfront about that at the beginning.
Yeah, that's a very cool incentive for sure for a lot of people. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat box, and it looks like there are a couple of questions about LinkedIn, and I feel like we've answered a few of those, especially in terms of volunteer versus staff. I think that was the main concern, was how are we getting volunteers from LinkedIn? But that makes me think of another issue, is that LinkedIn is a really good professional social network to find employees and potential staff. Are you using any sort of other social networks to recruit people in any way?
We have had some of our employees, through word of mouth, post things on Facebook or other social media that they utilize. We don't use it, Facebook per se, from an HR standpoint, because sometimes there are images or information on there that we would rather not know. So we don't necessarily use it as a recruitment tool, but certainly for word of mouth, it is a great tool.
And for us, I think I might have misspoke earlier. We don't use LinkedIn. We use Indeed to post volunteer opportunities. Okay. And we do occasionally, we're pretty active on Facebook and Twitter, send out messages about volunteer opportunities.
Okay. No, you definitely didn't misspeak. I misheard or misrepresented what you said. But no, Indeed is another really good example, and that's one of those sites that if people don't know about it, is probably a good thing to look into if you're looking for staff.
Hi, I wanted to mention, my name is Ashley. I'm here with Memorial Health System in Springfield, Illinois. I help do some sourcing for our behavioral health roles. We have both inpatient and outpatient opportunities. Coming from HR, we don't really see the volunteer side of it, but we have like a Facebook page for the health system, career specific, and then also Memorial Behavioral Health has a Facebook page that they manage with, a mix of articles and such, but we also post job opportunities from there. One thing that I think has been effective for us being a large health system and having opportunities around central Illinois in both rural and our capital city area is employee referrals and emailing them and contacting them via phone because, typically we feel that, people know people who are in their field as well as, like some of you have mentioned, like relying on the local university systems as well.
Yeah, those are great tips. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm also noticing here on the chat list, and we'll move on just here in a second, but Tracy Riley from Lines of Life has said that they reach out to local colleges and universities, which I think, for a lot of different crisis centers, having those centers of like massive populations of young people who are just getting into their careers or have just started their careers, these are great sources of places to recruit folks. She said they look at colleges, universities, and advertise on their listservs for grad students in the counseling and social work departments. That's amazing. That's a really good tip. They've also used Craigslist and something called MaxList. I have not heard of MaxList, but that might be something that people find helpful. So very, very good information about recruitment, some places, some tactics. In terms of once the people are on staff or they're currently volunteering, what sort of things do you show them in terms of either appreciation or incentives to continue or maintain their work behavior and their quality of work? In terms of retention and engagement, what sort of things do you do? Ron, do you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, sure. I actually brought some show and tell with me.
Cool.
I hope this works. So at Samaritans, volunteers receive a volunteer number. You can see mine is 2630, the 2,630th person. That's my number forever and ever, and you have to earn that number. It literally costs nothing to assign a number to somebody, but it has a great deal of meaning to the volunteers because they've completed overnight shifts before they're given their number. The other thing we do is we track volunteer hours of service. So you can see on this plaque, it's people who have achieved 500 plus hours, and the levels of awards are in different increments. There's 500, 1,000, 2,000, I think 5,000 hours of service. And so you do that, your name goes up on the plaque on the wall and hopefully stays there forever. The other things that we do with volunteers in terms of retention is we have an annual volunteer appreciation event during National Volunteer Week. We have regroup sessions for our training classes. So several weeks after training has ended, we've asked them to come back together, share their experiences. We've done some things that have been less successful. We've tried, at one point we had a book club, had a handful of people who participated. We've tried movie night, handful of people. We have done something called Chill and Fill, where Samaritans will provide the main food item, and we ask people to bring supplemental things, and just a chance to sit around the table, get to know one another, engage with people that you may not have seen since training. So I'd say that one more successful than the book club and the movie night. The volunteer appreciation, we actually twist some arms for our college students who are here in programs and have service learning agreements. That's part of the service learning agreement, is that you'll participate in at least 2 community events. So that helps get people in the door.
That sounds really fun. A lot of these things are, like, they may not mean anything intrinsically, but having your own number and then being able to say this is how many hours I've worked, that's a concrete representation of the work that you put in. So that's a really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And every year at the volunteer appreciation event, you get a certificate with the number of hours you've completed. You also get, and we try to change it up year to year. This year it was a little notebook with Samaritan's logo on the front. Last year it was a coffee cup with Samaritan's logo. We've done little rubber phones, squishy things. So just a little giveaway every year.
Mm-hmm. And I just like the term chill and fill. I think that's a really good, yeah. Beth and Rachel, what sort of things do you guys do?
Well, we've done a lot. We've done a lot of different giveaways. One of them, every employee gets this nice little mason jar mug.
And that started after we went green a couple of years ago. So once we took all the cups out of the rooms, we're like, well, we have to provide them with cups, and so now we every NEO. And then last year, as our Christmas gift, we usually do a Christmas gift, everyone got mugs, so they don't have to put their hot coffee now in their plastic mason jar. I think one of the things that we've done for more fun employee engagement that has been really successful is employee therapy. So we took everybody back to high school and said, on Mondays we're going to wear blue, and on Tuesdays, crazy hair day. And we were really surprised at how successful. It took a little while to make sure that trust was there. Like, can I really show up to work like this, and it's going to be okay? But once, we had a lot of buy-in from our executive team, and so when they came, dressed as a banana, people understood, like, okay, it's okay for me too. I can participate. And so that's what we did, is for everyone who participated, they got a raffle ticket for every day that they participated. And so then at the end of the week, all the raffle tickets, went in the bucket, and people had opportunity to win gift cards. And I think one of the reasons that has been so successful is because when, as many of you guys know, when you're working in a call center environment, you can't have an all-employee potluck and pull everyone off the phone to go enjoy and talk together. So those are ways that people can come to work prepared for the fun event, and then, they can kind of mix and mingle throughout the day, but it's not really impacting the work that they're doing, but they're still able to have some fun with it.
A couple of things I forgot about. When volunteers do an overnight shift, there's a bag of assorted candies and a thank you note left for them. And for every 4 hours of overnight work that you do, your name gets entered into a raffle for a $50 gift certificate once a month.
That's great. I think one of the other things, a little bit more tangible that keeps people is having a career ladder within the crisis specialist job. So we have crisis specialists 1, 2, and 3. And so, working on defining what does it mean to go from a 1 to a 2, and what other things do I need to learn, and what do I need to train in. So it's not kind of that, we just have 100 crisis specialists at one level, and if a supervisor position is unavailable, we don't have anywhere to go. It creates, some nice ability to learn and grow for those folks who want to.
And we have also have a similar kind of other opportunities. You can help out at these information sessions. You can mentor new volunteers. You can help with the training class. You can participate in some of our fundraising activities like the 5K or the Breakfast for Hope. So there are opportunities other than just come in for your phone shift.
One thing we were able to obtain were some wellness dollars through our insurance carrier. And what we did with those wellness dollars is we put in a fitness, and we were also able to, with some additional dollars, purchase walking desks and some exercise balls and things like that that people could utilize either at their desk or in the fitness room. So not only could they take a mental break, they could get, physically recharged. And we were to do that very low cost due to the dollars that we were provided by our carrier.
How do you, and I know the answer to this, but I don't know if everybody else does, how do you make the decision on what sorts of things to buy, like the stuff in the fitness room or the other stuff in the office? How do you all make the decisions as to how to engage with your staff?
A lot of our information comes from our surveys. We do a few surveys a year. One of them is a larger employee engagement survey that we do in late summer, early fall, and that's where we get our information. We also provide anonymous feedback boxes throughout the organization, so if people want to drop us a note and say, I really like this, or I don't like that, we read those and respond to those as well.
And I think it's really useful to use those surveys. You know, there's free SurveyMonkey that you can definitely utilize. It's important to do that just for fun stuff too, and not just for the feedback, you know, tell us what's good, tell us what's bad. When we, and I know you got to see this, Chris, when we redid, you know, the paint and some of the decorations in our call center, we put out a survey that was strictly fun. It was, do you want a Lego wall, or do you want, you know, a fuzzy wall? Do you want hopscotch carpet tiles, or do you want to just keep it neutral? You know, and there was nothing in there that people were worried about providing, you know, their feedback. And I think it was the most successful survey we ever sent out. The responses we got back, I mean, I think we had like 80 out of 120 responses within a couple of days. And so, you know, hopefully then when we send out the next survey that's maybe a little bit more difficult, they're more inclined to complete it, because we are offering those opportunities for them to have their voice heard in the things that might not seem as important, but it's the place that they come to every day.
Ron, do you work with any of those same kind of guidelines, or do you, how do you communicate with your staff about what they feel like they might need?
Well, it's small staff. I think we've got, I'd have to do a recount of maybe 19 people who are paid staff. In terms of the selection for, let's say, the giveaways at Volunteer Appreciation, we have one staff member who is, I think she's missed her career mark. She should have gone into party planning. But she generally will pick something out, run it by the staff, run it by some volunteers, and if she gets a generally positive response, we go with that. We've also done some survey work with our volunteers just around what's motivating and what's demotivating for you. And we're going to embark on, you know, because we're such a college town, the great benefit is you have an influx of volunteers during the academic year. And these are volunteers who are young and energetic and can do those overnight shifts. The bad news is during the holidays and the summer, they're going away. And so you can see significant seasonal changes in our performance. So we're really interested in understanding from what I call our community-based volunteers. You know, these are working people, some well past college. What is it that motivates them to come here, and how can we get more of them to do what they're doing?
Great. Yeah, one of the things that I love is that for any of these kinds of engagement activities, you're not just saying, this is what they're going to like. You're getting information from the staff and volunteers themselves. You're running things by them. And then when it comes to actually participating, there's leadership activity. People across the spectrum of leadership and staff and volunteers are participating, and that's a huge, I think, motivator for a lot of people in regular staff and volunteer roles to actually then engage and participate. Seeing everybody else doing the same things gives them permission that it's okay to be goofy or silly or participate in whatever the activity might be. So that's really cool. Looking at the chat, it's really active, so that's amazing. A couple of questions, and I want to make sure I got the right person. Julie's asking, what fitness items do you provide for employees at their desks? Rachel and Beth.
So we have the balls that they can sit on that are for kind of core stability and strength as opposed to a regular desk chair. We also offer, I forget what they're called, but they're like pedals to a bicycle, and they go under your desk so they can pedal while they're working. We also have standing desks, so a platform that rises up so they can stand rather than sit at their desk. And then in addition, we have a few treadmill desks so they can walk while they're working.
Resistance bands are another thing Dumbbells, we hope that they're keeping those in the same, but the resistance bands are a good way that if they wanted to, tone up at their desk, they could, and they have a lot of distractions.
Very cool. And looking at the chat again, a lot of the things that are coming out are kind of what Ron was talking about, and progressively giving people more recognition for different things and for different lengths of time and being there. So Tracy says they do a first shift gift, a 100-hour gift, 200-hour and 300-hour hoodie with their logo on them. Volunteers working on a holiday have themed potluck for each shift, so they get around that shift issue by having multiple events. Nina said we give a $5 coffee gift card for taking on a on-call shift. So these are, and this is one of our questions that we had outlined too, is that a lot of these engagement activities don't have to cost a whole lot. Just being able to say, here's something that just shows that we value your work and you being here and you showing up and you helping these people out on shifts that may not be totally desirable. Are there any things, and we'll start with Ron, are there any things that you all do that are relatively low cost that you haven't already mentioned, or maybe you want to point out again that that really go a long way at showing how much you value your volunteers and staff?
Well, I think, one, it's pretty obvious, I didn't mention it though, is to make a point to go into the phone room and to say thank you to people when they come in and when they leave. We operate in 4-hour shifts, and I know the staff, Ruth and her team, really make an effort to cover as much of that 24 hours as possible so that they're catching people who come in at 11 o'clock at night, who leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, and our staff that works overnight to make sure that we have connections with them. That thank you for being here, I think, goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've done other things too, like bring ice cream treats around on a hot Friday, say before Memorial Day.
One of the things we started doing in the last year, we created an employee intranet. So if you have any kind of employee website or something like that, we started doing employee spotlights, and we just kind of jump around to each department and highlight an employee. And it's a lot of personal information, like what's summer vacation and what do your kids look like, and so they're taking pictures, and do they have pets, what's your favorite band, things like that, so people can really get to know each other a little bit better, because again, in our environment we don't have a lot of mix and mingle and get to know each other. And Ron, or some of the comments we were reading, you think of this year we did employee badges. I don't know if you guys can see this, but see there's little pink bands on the bottom of my badge down here. I've been here for 4 years, so anyone who's been here 4 to 7 gets a pink band. Anyone less than 1 year gets a green band. And so as you kind of go through the different levels, and anyone over 10 years has a black card badge. So as they move through those times, they'll be presented with a new badge. That's something that's really inexpensive for us to provide, but kind of a recognition that you really put in a lot of time and you appreciate it.
Another thing we do is when I've been here 10 years now, so if I had a name badge, I'd get a black band. But we have different means of communication. We have been doing a weekly email message that covers, a befriending tip of the week, when we have coverage needs, just general information. But in recent years, we've also developed a volunteer website where we share with the volunteers our goals for the fiscal year, the number of calls that we want to answer, the percentage of people who we're able to serve, et cetera. And so we update those goals on a regular basis. And we also have a feature on that website where you can recognize a fellow volunteer.
Yeah, great examples of low-cost appreciation and being able to say, hey, thank you so much for doing what you do every single day. I love where the chat is going, because they're talking about food now, and one of the biggest things is chocolate. You know, I want to make sure that I have the right person. Abby is saying, you know, chocolate is always a, or Abby did not say that. Teresa said, we always have chocolate in the call center and some savory treats. I know at the crisis center that I used to work at, we always had a massive shelf that was just layered with snacks and healthy treats and all sorts of things, which didn't, I know it didn't cost that much, but it was huge for people, especially on overnights or during dinner shifts or anything like that. So those are all some really, really good examples of some low-cost ways to show that you as leadership care about your staff and volunteers. So that's really cool. Moving on to something that's a little bit different in terms of communication, and this I think does touch on an ongoing engagement aspect. You want to make sure that the staff and volunteers know what's going on at most of the levels. Transparency, I think, for a lot of our organizations is something that we either really excel at or we sometimes struggle with. But communication can be a really good way to again, show your appreciation and trust in your staff and volunteers. So I'm wondering, Beth and Rachel, if you have any tips or strategies on ways that you typically like to communicate with your staff.
Yeah, I think you learn that you kind of have to do it in a lot of different ways because people like to receive communication in many ways. So we typically, if it's a very important message, we're sending an email, we're posting it on our employee intranet, we're making sure all of the leaders know so they can pass along the information to the person. And then I think, you know, we have really tried in the last year to streamline our communications process. So any big message that comes out comes through our communications team, through communications email. And I think that's really nice because people have gotten used to, okay, if it's a message from them, probably it's applicable for the whole organization. But I will say sometimes it helps to know who your champions are and, you know, send that message through them, because if you have someone who is very respected and well-known to a certain department, maybe it's better if that email comes from them that you don't put it out through communication. So I think it's good to know your team and know how they will best receive that message.
Yeah, absolutely. Having people who you know are going to communicate well and people trust and can act as a messenger for sure.
And I think that sometimes communicating the bad as well. So we have a really nice current example. We just attempted to transition to a new AHR last week, and we wanted to, you know, show a lot of transparency in the process of as we were getting closer. So we did a 1-week countdown, and we sent an email to all of the contact center staff every day for 7 days prior to go live. And they were not long emails. You know, one of them, the first email had the final countdown, like that great 80s music video was included to kind of get people excited or, you know, to have a laugh. And then each day there was something that was really applicable to their job and something that they could look forward to in this new EHR. And so we attempted to go live on Monday and uncovered some other issues. And so we weren't able to, we had to shut it down, and now we're, you know, reprocessing, and we're going to attempt to go live again next Monday. And so we met yesterday and we're talking about, well, we communicated all the way up and, you know, people know now that it was unsuccessful, but we need to keep this line of communication going. And we need to say we appreciate, you know, your patience and your flexibility and just, again, keeping them in the loop. And then as a token of our appreciation, we're going to order pizza an hour before we go live this coming Monday.
We try to time, you know, we're doing that weekly communication, but sometimes you don't want messages to get lost. You really, it's so important that you want to break that cycle and send a specific message about a topic. You know, an example of that would be we're in an urban setting, and knock on wood, there have been no really egregious safety issues, but we did have a volunteer who was felt uncomfortable leaving in the evening, and we wanted to remind people that it's okay to walk out with your shift mates together, to walk to the T. If you're taking a cab home, stay inside the building until the cab is outside, don't wait outside, messages like that. That's actually another incentive I forgot about. If volunteers want to do a half overnight, because the public transportation system isn't running at 3 a.m., Samaritans will pay for a cab to take you home or to bring you in up to $30.
That's a good point about staff and volunteer safety. Making sure that that the facility is appropriately lit and that there are protections in place to make sure that they get safely to their cars or get home or whatever the case is. But communicating those things and doing it probably from recruitment throughout their time there is really important as well. That's really neat. And I know a couple of people have mentioned on the chat that they have like closed internal social media groups, whether it's a Facebook group or something else. And so I know that sometimes at the crisis center that I was at previously, that was something that was really big. They used it for everything between saying hi, posting current events, posting interesting articles and things like that, all the way down to shift coverage and saying thank you to someone who covered their shift. So that might be another way that people want to connect as well and communicate with their staff and volunteers. And I don't know, do you all use anything like that at your centers?
We don't. We found it's a little too dangerous to just let everyone have open access to Facebook and Twitter and all of those things. So, no.
We do, though. They can instant message each other, though, and through the intranet, through certain groups, like departmental groups, they can post messages or they could attach an article, but it's not through external social networks.
Right.
And the same for us. We don't have any Facebook group for the volunteers. The means of communication with staff are through the message that comes from schedules or the volunteer website.
Yeah, and one of the other potential barriers, obviously, too, is that if you do set up a group and volunteers or staff know that a lot of the leadership are also in that group, it can either really harm engagement or it could potentially get people in trouble, depending on what's said. So just keep that in mind if that's something that you are interested in doing. I know a lot of people do find it helpful if they keep them, like Nina is saying, if it's hidden in private, that they can, outside of the institution, outside of the facility, they can access those things and coordinate sometimes between each other. But keep those comms in mind as well. So those are some really good strategies for communication. And I'm going to try to pair the next two questions together just for the sake of time. But how do you all strategically solicit feedback? I know we were talking about surveys earlier about some things, but how do you solicit feedback about potential changes or system improvements, and then or even ongoing engagement and satisfaction, morale, those kinds of things? And then do you take that at any point and use it to evaluate those subsequent changes or improvements or anything like that? How do you find the data, and then how do you use them once you have them? Let's start with Ron this time.
Sure. Well, we've done a number of volunteer surveys, again, about what's motivating for you, what's demotivating for you, and we found that, and we did pay attention and listen to that. The demotivators tended to be inappropriate callers, and for some, the well-known or repeat callers. So we've done a better job of managing, certainly a better job of managing the inappropriate callers to reduce that number. It went from about 9% of call volume to around 2% of call volume. So that, I think that helped significantly. Through our QA process, that's an opportunity to have a one-on-one discussion with volunteers about, you know, their sense of how that call went, and then our feedback about how that call went. Hopefully, it's going to be, you know, on the same page. But if it's not, there's an opportunity for more conversation and discussion about their experience and why the disconnect between what we heard and what they think they said.
Yeah. So even if you don't get the entire story, there's an opening to of a door to continue that conversation and to try to figure out what happened. It's really
Correct.
Yeah, that's important. Rachel and Beth?
One of the things we haven't talked about is we have a social employee engagement committee, and we have representatives from all departments that meet together. I don't believe that, I think supervisor and maybe manager is the highest level that's in those meetings. So we don't have any executive team or senior executives in those meetings. We want to facilitate that kind of open discussion about what's working, what's not working. They also inform any policies that have to do with the employee experience. And so they're really the champions of the department, and we rely on them to be talking with their peers and find out from them and then bring it to the group. And then, you know, with the surveys, one of the ones we've done for the past couple of years is the best places to work. And so once we gather that data, we put it out for employees to see, so we're pretty transparent with that. And then usually those whatever markers came back the lowest will show up at our annual meeting with our CEO, where he will talk about, you know, our plans to address that. So we kind of bring it full circle at that point, and then, of course, follow up on it from there.
And one of the things that our CEO started doing about a year ago was having small group discussions. So we would just randomly select, say, 5 to 10 employees, and they would have an hour with the CEO just to ask questions, to you know, voice concerns, or to say thank you for something. And those were the responses and the feedback were documented, not necessarily who said it, but just what was said. And then, like we do with our surveys, we kind of crunch those down to the top, you know, issues or observations, and we address those as an executive team and also share that feedback across the organization.
Very, very good. This has been, I think, incredibly valuable, and I know that's not just my perspective, because everybody on the chat is really, really involved here. And so I want to make sure that we save a few minutes for questions, and we can probably try to do this kind of lightning round style, because we only have 7 minutes, if you can believe that. And I'm looking through here really quick. Tanisha was asking, I think, well, I know the question was, I don't know who was asking it. The question was about how long is the training, whether it's for staff or volunteers. Beth and Rachel, you want to start us off on this one. How long is the training for your staff?
Yeah, so we just revamped our training plan, and it's a little bit long at this point, but what we do is on day one, everyone comes in and gets new employee orientation, and that's across departments, so they really get just who we are as an organization. They get the HR, the technology introduction, and then after that, I have them for 4 days to do the clinical training for any crisis staff, dispatchers, anyone who's up in the call center. And so we focus the first 2 days on learning some of the systems, learning the theories and the models, you know, Joiner's model for suicide. We use the Roberts model for the call resolution. So we go through that. We also do a lot of cultural sensitivity training. We kind of poke and prod at folks to see what comes out and make sure we're addressing any of those issues up front, just so they can be prepared for some of the calls that they might receive. And then we go through actually hands-on practice in a classroom setting. So we have laptops, they're logging into all of the systems, and then we listen to call recordings, and I walk them through how to complete the risk assessment, how to assess level of acuity, and then working on their documentation. So after that first week, then they go up to the call center and they're linked with a mentor, and they spend the next 2 to 3 weeks just focusing with that person one-on-one, kind of transitioning, getting all of the details, and then slowly that progresses to at the end where they're handling everything and the mentor is just listening in to make sure that they've got it all down, and then they transition to what we call semi-independent, where they're on their own. Nobody's necessarily listening into every call, but they are staffing every call with a supervisor. Once the supervisor feels like they've got this, they don't need someone checking in on every call, then they move to fully independent status and get their cubicle assignments, and they're off into crisis specialist wonderland.
Very cool, very comprehensive. Ron, what's the timeline like for your training?
Well, we follow the requirement because we are accredited by Contact USA, and if you go to their website, you can see all of the components that they require as part of the training and the minimum number of hours. Our classroom portion was 32 hours. It included role plays, outside speakers, presentations. We're working to bring that down just a little bit because we find that it's hard to maintain your attention for 8 hours. By the end of the day, we're fried, they're fried. So some of this we believe they can do online on their own and come into class prepared. So we're looking at the number of, we don't want to go below the accreditation standard, but we have some wiggle room there. After the classroom training, you have practical training in the phone room with a mentor. Your first shift, you listen, and you might take one call at the end. The second shift, you take every other call and debrief with your mentor. And the third time you're in, you take all of the calls at your own station, but you have a mentor available to you to debrief those calls.
Yeah, I like how there's a tiered approach, which totally makes sense. I mean, I assume that a majority of centers use some sort of either tiered approach or mentoring approach, where you have people sitting in with others who have been there for a long time. That's a pretty common one as well. So there's a varied range. I know, talking to as many people in the Lifeline Network as I have from all the crisis centers across the country, that training really does vary from very, very short, whatever is typically required by whatever accrediting body they're under, all the way up to 10 or 11 or 12 weeks sometimes. So there are a lot of variations and everything in between. But I think one of the things that we pointed out through this hour is that appreciation for your volunteers, engagement with them is important, not just in the training to make sure that they're retaining the information, but actually once they're on board and once they're answering phone calls. To show that appreciation, to show that you care and are involved in their work. And that really at the bottom, the bottom line, and at the end of the day, the priority needs to be with the callers and our contacts. And if they aren't happy where they're at, we're not providing the best service that we possibly can for the people who are calling in. And one of the other things I really quickly wanted to mention is that for anybody in the Lifeline Network, I put out a newsletter every week, and in that newsletter there is a button and a feature called the Crisis Center Rockstar, and there's a button there that you can click on and nominate someone at your crisis center. And we've had directors, we've had other leadership staff, we've had coordinators and volunteers, and we've had everybody under the sun at a whole bunch of different institutions being recognized for the work that they do every day. So if you get the urge to do that, feel free to go ahead and nominate someone at your crisis center. Really quickly, Rachel and Beth, do you have any sort of like last things you want to make sure that you get in, last things you want to say about recruitment, retention, or how to engage your volunteers?
I guess I would say recruitment, it's about never stopping. You should always be recruiting regardless of whether or not you have an open position. And with regards to retention, I think it's listening. Listening is key. to hearing, really hearing what they need and what they want, and what would make the organization best and prosper for everyone.
And just to double on that, I would say, listening and taking action and making it known that you are doing something based on feedback, and if not, why not? What's the bigger picture that maybe it's not the right fit for us?
Yeah. Ron?
Well, my final word would be to say thank you to Beth and Rachel, and to you, Chris. I really enjoyed this forum of having a conversation and having people participate. I think it worked really well.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Beth, Rachel, Ron, for making this like the fastest webinar for the Lifeline I think we've ever had. It flew by, and thank you everybody who joined on the webinar and participated. Chat is fantastic. I'm going to go back through here and find any questions that we may have missed very quickly, and I will share this out with the recording as well. But very quickly, can we get everybody to share their contact information? Ron, can you share yours really quick?
Sure. I'm going to type it in here, but it's rwhite@SamaritansHope.org.
Perfect. And then it looks like Rachel's doing the same thing.
We have plenty of emails.
Yeah, and then anybody who doesn't already have my email address, it is cmaxwell@mhaofnyc.org. Like I said, I will make sure to include all of this information with the email that goes out with the recording. And again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for everybody who jumped on the webinar to watch this. I really hope that you got something out of it. And I'm thinking because we really just did go through that very quickly, we may need a round two at some point in the next few months. So if we can,
Good afternoon, guys.
If we can possibly find any other questions to answer. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, how are you guys?
Steve, is this you?
Yes.